Good morning, Chairman, and let me also join others to congratulate the convener for sustaining the tempo in spite of the challenges in the economy. This is the 6th edition, and I think I'm keynoting for the 3rd time. So even though I haven't done 6 like Mr. Adikweolu, I think I'm running after you, sir. Thank you. Please permit me to recognize somebody. I have a new assignment now. I'm working with the Nigerian police on housing, redevelopment, assets as executive consultant. And I have in the audience this morning my colleague in that journey is the MD of Nigerian Police Housing and Construction Company, retired DIG Dan Malam. Gentlemen, please, Dan Malam, please stand up for recognition. We have a huge mandate. There are over 400,000 Nigerian police, men and women of Nigerian police, and I'm not sure up to 10% are properly housed. So fortunately we have the opportunity to do our bit, and we've already started. My presentation, please. Like the chairman said, this summit is coming at a very good time. This government is just settling down, so it's a good opportunity for us to set agenda. Incidentally, we've been doing that one way or the other. Last week, I was part of the delegation, including Mr. Femi Adewole here, who met with the Honorable Minister of Housing, and we laid some things for him. Incidentally, I also think that this government has been saying the right things, but I think it's time to start doing the right things. We've been talking, the language is good about, I think we have a professional in the ministry. We're happy that we don't have a Ministry of Housing back. A professional who's been saying the right things. We're going to start doing the things. So this morning, I've been asked to look at the critical part for, is this working? Oh, good stuff. So I've divided the presentation into like 4 parts. I'll deal with the preliminaries. Just basically look at housing. Housing, particularly the nexus between housing and poverty, how we can use housing as enabler to drive poverty down in the economy. There's a strong correlation between housing and the macroeconomy. The macro fundamentals always determine what happens to the housing sector. And when you have a government that is focused on lifting people out of poverty, one of the instruments that we can use is housing. So I will look at that very, very briefly. Then I'll look at a bit of history. I know that recently I've been trying as much as possible to forget what has happened, and focus on what we need to do. But I think it was A.V. Dicey who said that the opinion of yesterday underlies the reform of today. Incidentally, we've done a whole lot over the years. We have, since the time of the first National Development Plan, we've been talking about housing. We've had programs for housing, second National Development Plan, third National Development Plan, up to the first National Housing Policy. So I have 2 slides on our affordable housing journey, just for us to see what we've done over the years, and then try to understand, in spite of all that we've tried to do, why are we still where we are? In 2019, we invited the UN rapporteur on housing to Nigeria, Leila Faraha, to come and look at our housing. So she spent some time there, and then they issued a very damning report, you can imagine. So I'll look at that just to put everything in context. When somebody from outside looks at you, you can then understand how you really are doing, rather than just looking at yourself. They say that's why it is called testimonial. A testimonial is because somebody has to attest on your behalf, and you can't write your own testimonial. So I'll look at that very, very briefly. Then I'll look at, and I'll try to do some reality check. I always don't want to get into the argument of whether the housing deficit is 20 or 30 or 40 million. reality of the matter is that we have acute deficits of housing. So I have a slide that I always use to illustrate that, because this is an industry where somebody builds 10 flats and is able to collect money from 500 people. That can only happen in a scenario where there's acute shortage. So I'll look at that very briefly. Then I'll look at the issues and the challenges. Why are we still where we are? The critical issues that we need to address. There are some levers that this government must pull, and it's a no-brainer all over the world. Countries who have successfully tackled the issue of affordable housing. The chairman was talking about the home ownership penetration in Nigeria being under 20%. Some countries well above 60. Some Vietnam, even though they're like a war-torn country, home ownership penetration is above 90% in that country. So it is possible. Countries have tackled affordable housing, and there are simple levers that you must pull. Once you are able to just identify those levers, you pull those levers together, you just begin to tackle, you just move from rhetoric to achievement. And that is exactly what I think we need to do. If we must actualize this renewed hope in the area of housing, we need to understand those levers, pull the levers. Then I have lessons from other jurisdictions. So look at what other jurisdictions have done, particularly some African countries. Recently, we've been looking at Egypt a lot, because incidentally, in May this year, we were at the 9th World Bank Affordable Housing Conference in Washington, D.C. Mr. Femi Adewale was there, and they had invited this lady who is doing wonders now. She's like the star girl of affordable housing globally, and she's the one she's doing in Egypt, and they've done so remarkably well. So what are the lessons that we can learn from that? In a lot of these areas, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just look at what other people have done, how they have managed to pull those levers together, and how the levers is working for them, And then I'll conclude. I'm not going to spend too much time on definitions, but when you present, I'm a former law teacher, so they tell us that you have to start with definitions, I think the important point I want to stress, and the representative of the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs already also mentioned that point, that housing is not just the 4-block wall that we put people. Housing is about dignity, it's about tenure, it's about security, it's about how much you spend on housing. And incidentally, our definition of housing in Nigeria tallies with the United Nations definition, and this definition is national housing policy since 1991. So it's not something new. So when we're talking of housing, we're looking beyond just where people go home and sleep. We're looking about the totality of all the rights that go with it, including the standard of the housing, the location, accessibility. There are some houses today that you see. In fact, when the UN rapporteur came to Nigeria, if you look at her, and the report is available online, I have the reference in my presentation. She said in all her work, she has never seen that level of human indignity as she saw in Nigeria. And that was, for me, that should be a reality check, on all of us. The other point I try to do, this one is blocking, is to, so then I look at the components of housing, which I've already said, so I'm going to just keep this so I can go to the main issues. Then I try to look to establish the link between housing and poverty. Housing and poverty. People don't understand that there's a direct correlation between housing and poverty. Housing affects GDP because every investment in housing goes to GDP. And governments who have understood how to use housing, they know that when you want to stimulate the economy immediately, you invest in housing. It is good to intervene in banks, to intervene in agri, to intervene in everything. But in housing, the multiplier effect is immediate. If you start a project now, in fact, before you move to your site, you're already affecting the economy. You're already doing designs. Those ones are already earning money. But when you want to stimulate the low levels of the economy, You will imagine that the moment you move to any site, you just see a market spring up automatically. You see people are selling that, you know. That is the immediate activator of the economy. So countries who have understood this, they take housing so seriously, you know. They don't just, they understand the significance of land in the economy, you know. Recently, if I'm trying to write something now, you know, because we're too whimsical about land. Land is so critical. Land, everything happens on land. You know, so land is not a commodity that somebody just wakes up in the office, I'm a minister, go and start paying 5 million. No, it doesn't happen like that. You know, and people are arguing, it's okay, I reduce it to 3 million. That is not how they manage land. Land is the driver of the whole economy. Everything happens on land. You build factories on land, you build houses, everything happens on land. Even, I always tell the IT people, the ICT people, you know, that even the cloud, you know, this cloud computing, the cloud lives on the ground inside data centers, you know. So you can do anything in the metaverse. I understand somebody is building a metaverse church in Lagos now. You can do your meeting in the metaverse. You can go to church in the metaverse. You still have to go and sleep in a physical home. That underscores the significance of land. And countries who understand this, they pay special attention, you know. But here, we have intervened in everything else except housing. In fact, we have anchor borrowers program, anchor lenders program, everything. The only one that government has not taken steps to intervene is housing. And that is not the way it should happen. So I'll leave this, I'll move to, of course, just trying to set the standard, the basic, you know. Now, I already spoke to this slide. The link between economy and housing is very critical. So when a government decides to pay attention to housing, to create the right environment for housing, to build a framework that drives housing delivery, you are helping the whole economy from beginning till the end. You just see that everything just begins to happen. The market sellers are selling, the artisans are working, the plumbers are working, the carpenters, and these are the people who really drive the economy. I mean, so this report by Liam Farrer in 2020 on Nigeria. You know, she spent some time in Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt, you know, interviewed people, you know, and the report is available. She said she was shocked, that she was so shocked that of all the countries that she had visited, including Bangladesh, including war-torn countries, that she had never seen a country where people live with the highest, with the level of indignity that she saw with housing in Nigeria. Homelessness, and you know, they say there are 24 million homeless people in Nigeria, which I think is wrong. I think it's probably much more than that, because if you are counting those who live under the bridge only, you know, if you really take account of those who don't have what you can call a home, I think it's much more than. So this should be a damning report for us. You know, so and we understand why the crisis is there. Strong population growth, our population is growing faster than the economy, urbanization, rapid urbanization, you know, rising unemployment, you know, because even when people have jobs, they can't even afford the homes. Now, when unemployment is now around 46% in the economy, you can imagine the impact on the economy. And worsening macro fundamentals, you know, in any country where housing sector does well, the economy must be doing well. So when inflation is inching towards 20-something%, MPR is 18.75%, exchange rate, we shouldn't even mention that, because an exchange is very critical, because people don't understand that in our industry, 80% of our inputs are imported. So it's only land and cement, and we also saw what has happened to cement. All other components are imported, so it's tied to the value of naira versus dollar. You know, and look at what has happened. And I give you the typical example I always give is reinforcement. By February 2020, before we went to lockdown, reinforcement was 120,000, 130,000 naira per metric ton. You know, Then after locking down, it started going up and up and up and up. Today, I think it's about 500,000 naira per metric ton. So how do you deliver affordable houses? So the macroeconomy, when the macroeconomy is going down, it also has a negative impact on housing. Of course, lack of access to finance, which I will speak to very shortly. So I'm just going to skip this. It's in the presentation, just to understand our journey on affordable housing. You can see from the first National Development Plan, we've been on that journey. Second National Development Plan, third National Development Plan, then the military came, they set up a committee, 10 wise men, they came up with the first National Housing Plan. It was launched in 1991, and so on and so forth, So it's been, the journey has been there, and then we went, and, preparing for this presentation again, and looking at the depth of work, the depth of effort that we have put into creating policy documents, strategic documents, plans, you really feel very sad that we have practically achieved nothing. Practically achieved nothing. In this country today, put all of us together, developers, everybody, we are not doing 100,000 houses per annum. I'll be surprised if all of us are doing 100,000 houses per annum. All of us. Everybody, private sector, public sector, add everybody together. I mean, the last government did less than 10,000 houses in 8 years, and those houses are still unsold, less than 10,000 houses in 8 years. I think they did, 12,000 in 8 years, so it's not, we're not bereft of policies. We're not bereft of policy initiatives. We're not bereft of strategies. Implementation and execution has just been the point where we fail. And what do they say about strategy? Strategy is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. You have to go beyond strategizing to executing. And that is one of the things that we have to be drumming in the ears of the present government. So I always like to show this slide just to show the reality check of where we are. I'm building on this slide every time, because this is as you can see the slide, somebody will build 10 houses. It will sell to 500 people. 500 people will pay for 10 flats. Somebody built 6 flats in Surulere and collected money from over 200 people. It shows the depth of deprivation. It shows the level of shortage of housing. People go to this, and it happens every time, and then we'll shout. 2 months later, somebody else will do it, So why are we where we are, in spite of all what has happened? So let me now quickly proceed. What are the issues and challenges? I'd like to just speak to the issues and challenges, and which tells us the levers that we need to pull. Because once you understand the bottlenecks in the process, you just know what you need to do in the chain and how to just overcome that. Now, the first challenge for me, is about land. And I like to tell this government that if we must begin to solve the problem of affordable housing, it has to start with access to good title, affordable and accessible land. And that is why all over the world, because I always say that as, number one, let us understand, and I also want to put this one for this government, that you cannot use market solution to solve affordable housing problem. It has never worked anywhere. Because I'm a developer, I only put my money where there will be, I'm deploying risk capital. I only put my money. Now, if I do affordable housing, I will struggle to get 3 to 5%. Larry will not do affordable housing because she knows that the return is less than, you will struggle to get more than 5%. I can put the same effort in doing premium. You are doing 30, 40%. So it's a no-brainer. Your inflation is 20-something%. Your borrowing cost is like 20-something%. Who wants to pay attention to a segment that doesn't deliver? And that is the reality. So we need to begin to change our thinking about affordable housing. And one of the things that I've seen with this government, because I've followed, what has happened so far, is that, okay, we're saying the right things. We want to lift people out of poverty. We want to pay attention to housing. We want to do this, we want to do that. And I think that we need to start by paying attention to land. Land, and the simple way to do it is to create a separate window for land for affordable housing. Somebody cannot go to the market, buy land at the open market, do your permitting and approval in the same way, borrow money from financial institutions like everybody at 20-25%. And I always give the example of this Nigerian company doing the 50,000 houses in Chad. The company is called Eximir. Incidentally, I met the founder and owner. The guy is a Nigerian. He's the one doing 50,000 houses. He went through the bid, won the bid. The government created a separate window. First of all, they gave him land, created a separate window, so everything that is bringing in, everything that is important for that project, they gave special duties. And that's what Kenya has just done. Kenya has just reduced duties on materials for affordable housing to 2.5%. Once you prove that this is a project in this category, they give you that special dispensation, and that's what we need to do as well. Now, if you look at the value chain of housing, everybody, every participant in that value chain in housing is interested in the title to the land, because the title determines everything. I always tell people, I always joke that you can never hear of house lord. Have you heard of house lord before? The Lord knows only the landlord. And landlord is about title. So titling is very critical. And when you operate in an environment where your title is uncertain, where you could buy land today, and then 20 years later, somebody else comes with judgment, like we have seen all over. So we need to pay attention to the issue of titling. Issue of titling. We have to get to a level where the law guarantees your title once you have taken 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, and there's no evidence of fraud or malfeasance on your part. Look at what is happening now all over the country. Let me just take 2 examples in Lagos. In Agidingbi, the case was in court for 38 years. Eventually, somebody won. 2,000, all those factories in Agidingbi. So they just woke up somebody, all those big factories, houses, they just woke up one day and they said, somebody else owns the land after 38 years. When I was MD of UPDC, we had bought a land in Lekki. I mean, if you know a project called Pinnock Beach Estate in Lagos, that was my project, to the glory of God, before I retired. We had bought this land, 85 hectares, with sandfield for 7 years, and waited. We put infrastructure for another 3 years. Then we started selling. After 15 years, another person got judgment. So one family, we bought from this family, another family got judgment. Now the law says that to perfect your title, you do 3 things. You get governor's consent, you register the title, and you do your stamping. We did everything. We had sold to 470 people. A lot of these people had also gone through the process of perfecting their title. Then suddenly, the judgment came. So you can imagine. Eventually, we as the radical title owner, we had to settle with the new family just to protect the interest. Now, if it wasn't a big company, that would have been impossible. So the reality of the matter is that if we want to attract the level of investment that we need to attract into housing, we have to solve all these fundamental problems. Now, there's a strong nexus between infrastructure and housing development. Now, we understand that, I mean, of course, we all know that we are grossly, we have gross infrastructure deficit, you know, roads, water, you know. And, you know, as a developer, you are a mini local government. You provide your house, you provide your land, you provide your road. I remember when I done a project in Abuja, Metro City. In Abuja was my project. And I'd invited the Minister for Housing, Mr. Mampebu, that time to come and commission. You know, so we were having a side conversation. And she said, I love all this, your infrastructure. This power generator. I said, ma, infrastructure as a percentage of my construction cost in this project is 18%. That is crazy. Best practice, 4-5%. So when you have to invest as much, I mean, in non-ancillaries, in non-essentials that you don't really need you shouldn't ordinarily invest in it. You know, so when we create housing zones, we should endeavor to put at least primary infrastructure. Let those who will build the houses deal with the secondary infrastructure. Funding, and the funding is at two levels: project funding and retail finance. Now we've done a whole lot of things. My view on project funding, we need to consciously grow our capital market. The capital market, see, you cannot use money market money to fund housing. Typical gestation period of a project is 48 months. You cannot be using 90-day money to fund that. You have to consciously create instruments that will help you, you know. And when I was meeting with my people at the Nigerian Police Property yesterday, I said, see, that is the way to go. We have all these projects. We have to go out. You know, because there's pension fund, 15 trillion naira sitting in pension funds. But pension funds cannot invest directly in housing. They can only invest in instruments that you create. They can invest in asset-related, real estate-related assets and instruments, bonds, REITs, mortgage-backed securities. These are what pension funds can invest in. So we have a responsibility also as players in this market to sit down and begin to create those instruments that will be attractive to the capital market. The capital market is supposed to be the aggregator of fund. And the advantage you have in capital market is that you have access to a wider pool of investors. In money market, you are dealing with just your bank. But in capital market, you have access to, if you float a REIT or a sukuk or a bond, you could have as many as 10,000, 20,000. They invest in small units. But when you bring everything together, it becomes a whole lot of money that you need. You know, and at the retail end also, we also need to deal with the issues. Technical challenges. I don't know whether you have read Business Day this morning. The CEO had seen the summary on the news yesterday. The CEO of Construction Keza, Mr. Gable, was saying that the jackpot syndrome has led to empty. All project managers have gone. Oh. All the project managers that you know, they have gone. In my office, my best hands, they've gone. They've gone. Just like joke, they've gone. And then when you recruit, the process of now training and getting them to that level is very challenging. So some of these things that we just read, the impact on our sector is also very enormous. Technical challenges, we need to begin to consciously, I always talk about technical education. You know, before we used to bring tilers from Togo, but now because of the value of the naira, they are not interested in coming to Nigeria again. You know, the tilers from Togo or from Cotonou, the naira cannot take them home again, you know, so they're not interested in coming. So it's a major issue. So, I mean, I know of one of these big developers who now bring tilers from Italy. They bring tilers from Italy, you know. We can't talk too much about legal and regulatory. You know, in my last week at FHA program, I had a whole presentation on legal and regulatory. You see, the reality of the matter is that we're supposed to use legal and regulatory to facilitate housing delivery. This government must understand that the end is to facilitate housing delivery. When we understand that, for example, we know that we don't have to impute revenue generation philosophy in every regulation that is made. That is where we miss it. We cannot say somebody who bought flat under mass housing in Kubwa to come and pay 3 million. I tell you, that regulation is dead on arrival. It's DOE. Me, I know. That regulation will be honored more in breach than in observance. We have to be real. It is not every regulation that we build revenue generative philosophy into it. I was arguing with one state. I won't mention the state. They have a law against tree felling, cutting trees. But when you have a site, and the law says that if you have a fresh site and you must cut trees, you must give undertaking to plant the same number of. But in this state, when you want to cut, just invite them, they will just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 30 trees. They just give you a bill once you pay. So as I see, the underpinning philosophy of this law is sustainability. So even you have given me a bill now, I'll go and pay, I'll cut these trees. But there has to be a better way of implementing the law. So law and regulation should facilitate. Now we have the main legislation in Nigeria on housing and real estate is Land Use Act. That law is 45 years old. We have not reviewed, we have not amended the Land Use Act in 45 years. Who does that? We're still using a 1978 law, a 1978 enactment to drive the whole of. Little wonder we're not making any progress. We're still doing governor's consent the same way. In 1991, as a speaker at the National Workshop on the Land Use Act, I said we are laying ambush for applicants for consent. It's what we are still doing today. It's what FCT wants to start doing now. And that's not the way it should be. So the whole of legal environment, permitting an approval, should be to drive and facilitate housing delivery. But that process is needlessly painful. In fact, anytime we're starting a new project, you already think, oh my goodness, we have to go through this process again. So we need to get to a level that I begin to see these challenges that have beset us, that have held us back over the years, and what we need to do in that respect. Of course, rising cost of housing delivery, we can't say too much about it. I mean, the costs have certainly gone out of the roof. Everything gone out of the roof. And people will say, no, but there is tiles in Nigeria now that make tiles now. Do you know that all of them put together, CDK, Real Ceramic, all of them, they can't supply 5% of what we require. So if you want to buy tiles today from Real Ceramic, your lead time is 11 to 12 months. So you pay in full to them, and you wait for 11 months. Who will do that? I will just drive across to Turkey. I'll go to Turkey, or I'll fly to, if I can't go to China, Turkey. Turkey is Chinese price for European standard. You buy 2 months, your tiles are here. So I know that raises other fundamental questions about the whole of the economy. Are we producing? I know that when Femi was in Family Homes Fund, he tried to empower some people to produce doors, to produce this, to produce that, But the reality of the matter is that what percentage of our requirement can we make? I already spoke about return on investment. People are running away from affordable housing because the return is absolutely unattractive. Particularly when people blame pension funds that why are they not investing in housing? In a country where NPR is 18.75%, Treasury bills is not of 18.75%. Why would I take my risk? If I have the fortune of being a portfolio manager, I would just be placing my money. I'll just sit coolly. I will invest in TB. It's sovereign assets, risk-free. I will now go and start buying land, deal with Ogunniran, deal with the market, import this, import that, for lower margin. you know, because we have to start thinking holistically. I tell you that the competing asset for us in housing is not just another house. People want to investment capital is rational. Those who want to bring their money, they are rational people. They think. Even you, if you have money, you will weigh. Should I put my money in crypto? These are days of cryptocurrency. These are the days of fungibles and all those things. You know? Or buy gold. At the end of the day, there's no difference in the return. It's return. What happens is the return. So we need to begin to think holistically. I need to move now. I already spoke about human capacity. I think this guy is some recent initiatives. Okay, so charting the new part. Charting the new part, pulling the right levers. And I have a very simple prescription, you know, for dealing with affordable housing. Just look at, identify the levers and know what you must do to those levers. And that's exactly what I've done in this presentation. You know, I think the first thing, and I think in this respect, this government is doing better than previous governments, you know. The overriding consideration for housing, you know, we need to start seeing housing as a social good and not an economic good. The underpinning philosophy, because that's what will drive the political will to work for housing. In Egypt, at the start of their journey, the first thing they did was to enact a law in 2014. They call it Social Housing Services Law of 2014. And that law defines housing as a right. But you know, Nigerian housing is a privilege. Because the provision on shelter under the Nigerian Constitution is under Chapter 2, Fundamental Objectives and Directive Principles of State Policy. And that is not justiciable. You cannot adjudicate on them. You cannot sue. You know, so the first thing is the whole philosophy around housing. We just need to change it. You know, we need to rethink the philosophy of housing. We need to rethink the underpinning philosophy. Housing is a right for the people. And you will see this here and there in all the, I mean, if you look at the new National Housing Strategy 2023, talk about the vision for housing, talk about global perspective, talk about the enablers, talk about the pillars. At the end of the day, the question is that when we go beyond those documents, what do we do? That's very, very critical. I said we have to move beyond rhetoric. We have to be a lot more deliberate. We have to be a lot more intentional about housing. You know, when the previous government came in the first term, the Minister for State for Housing said they would do 1 million homes per annum. I said, for where? So I joined the debate. I said, for where, Honorable Minister? You know, please try and do 10,000 per annum first. Create the framework. Because housing is not just, the house, they don't just fall from the ground though. In those countries where you see incremental and phenomenal growth, they have laid the framework. They have created the pipeline of land. They have created the pipeline of projects. They have created the pipeline of partners who will deliver. You know, so everything just cascades into each other almost automatically. That is all what we also need to do. You know, so the philosophy must change. My view, I've said it before, you cannot use market solution for affordable housing. You always need government intervention, direct intervention, all over the world, direct intervention. You know, we've seen some of the examples that we have seen, you know. It's not because Femi is there. The only institution that has delivered to scale a bit in Nigeria is Family Homes Fund. And that's a clear case of direct intervention, you know. So we need to, and then in Lagos, they had the home ownership mortgage scheme, you know. At a stage in Lagos, they were delivering 200 flats every month. Interest rates under 10%. They created. You have to always speak to the ecosystem. Housing has an ecosystem of supply and demand. They must speak to each other. You have to create that framework that makes your supply to go right into your demand. And then everything begins to move seamlessly. So we need direct intervention. Homes in Lagos, we've had a lot of noise about rent-to-own schemes. See, we need to pay particular attention to rental housing, because there's nowhere in the world where everybody is a homeowner. So we should begin to part of the philosophical change is talking more about access to home rather than ownership of homes. Even if you want to sell house at 1 million today, there are people who cannot afford the 1 million. Are you now saying that because they can't afford the 1 million, they should not have homes? No. We have to create a series of bespoke solutions to the various segments of the economy. That is what we need to do. And of course, building a coalition of partners. Anywhere in the world where they've been able to deliver on affordable housing, it's a coalition between financiers, developers, landowners, everybody. And that is exactly what Kenya has done when the new government came. And you can see they're making progress. And if you can go and look at Estate Intel, the latest report on Kenya that was issued, look at it. When the president came, he called all of them, they identified all of them, and they locked themselves up for 2 days, including the president. And by then we finished, they said, we want to do 500,000 homes. They didn't set an impossible target, Now they've started delivering. I was reading the report, this one 20,000, this one 10,000. Very soon they will meet this 500,000 target, But like our minister said last week that Federal Housing Authority in 50 years did not deliver 50,000 houses, with all the resources that is at its disposal, So we need to start thinking along that line. This is not working now. Somebody has to help me. Don't know. Okay. They've taught us to always have a plan B. Always have plan B. But it would be nice if we can solve the problem so that people can just follow, but have something on mind. So speaking about the levers that we need to pull, I've spoken about direct government intervention. The next thing that we need to do is to deal with the issue of land. The issue of land. I've said here that we're going to overhaul the land tenure system. We're going to review all the legislation that are long overdue. And like I said at the FHA program last week, for the Land Use Act, we can start from the quick wins. Now, it will be difficult to amend the Land Use Act because the Land Use Act is an existing legislation under the Constitution, so you need 2/3 of National Assembly and 2/3 of houses of assembly across the country, which will be difficult because the governors, it's like you are taking away their pot of soup. However, a lot of the bottlenecks to land administration today did not come from the substantive provisions of the Land Use Act. They have come from regulations made by the various governments. And I always give an example. The Land Use Act says in section 26 that it shall be unlawful for the owner of land to alienate without consent. It doesn't say how much you must pay for consent. It doesn't say who will sign. It doesn't say the forms that you... It is the governors who have created this large bureaucracy that is not moving. So the first thing to do is to get these guys to start looking at those bottlenecks to land and streamline. In some states, there's only one human being who signs. And when it's not available, it cannot sign. There's no provision like that. What they've done in Lagos State is that the governor has delegated the power to sign to like 6 or 8 commissioners. So as the thing is leaving land registry, it goes straight to a commissioner. It goes straight to another commissioner. in that way, the oil of progress is being willed. Finance, we need to create platform for long-term funding. I am for long-term funding of projects, and I have good experience in trying that. When I ran UPDC in 8 years, we raised $400 million. In this country, we have $400 million. We floated a bond, we floated a REIT, another bond. We were always in the capital market, and that helps us to deliver to scale. You cannot deliver to scale if you don't have money. Real estate housing is a money game. All the grammar that we will speak here, if there's no money, you may have the best of designs. You will just be admiring the model every day you come to your office. If you don't have money, you need money to activate the process, And as a housing institution, you have to be able to match your assets and liabilities sustainably over the long term. Otherwise, when we are doing this conference next year, you'll be in your village farming because you just have gone bankrupt if you can't match your assets and liabilities. I already spoke about infrastructure. I also mentioned tax incentives here. I think it's working now. I don't know why it's not. You can just help me. Next slide. We need to use tax. We are having road infrastructure credits. Why can't we have housing infrastructure, housing credits? As a developer, if you do this, it's taking off your taxes. It's a no-brainer. We've done it for other sectors. We need tax incentives. We need to begin to create investment vehicles. In one of the policies, I think it was in the 4th National Development Plan, there was a strong case made for National Housing Fund. You can't run successfully without a National Housing Fund. A revolving fund, that will enable the players. That is what has been done in other parts of the world. Let me quickly look at, next slide. I want to look at lessons from other jurisdictions. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, lessons from other jurisdictions. I said, successful models usually involve a holistic approach, clear, consistent policy direction, and an integrated framework between the players, between the government. We have to move from harmful competition to winning collaborations. We have one goal, which is to deliver housing, and the critical drivers, you need that framework to deliver them. I want to go through, I don't want to talk about US, I don't want to talk about UK, I don't want to talk about Canada, I have it in the slide. I don't want to talk about Latin America, or Latin America is very, it resonates with me because one of the case studies that I did at Harvard was on affordable housing in Latin America, particularly in Colombia. But I want to talk about Egypt. Can you just go so I can round up? Next. Okay, so this is Egypt. Now, this is affordable housing in Egypt. This is the house. These are the houses for the list. If you put this one in Maitama, you'll be very proud. If you put this one in Ikoyi, you'll be very proud. This is the housing for the lowest. In fact, they call them the poorest of the poor. We use the language in Nigeria, but we don't do anything for them. This is what they have done. So what did they do in Egypt? So they enacted the law, like I said. They enacted the law, and the law creates a fund. Under the fund, when you buy houses, your interest rate is between 5 and 7%. So first of all, market rate is between 18 and 25%. But under this law, when you buy, if I was so shocked that they've gone to a level now that, let's say they want to go to Kubwa now, They will now publish in the newspapers that our next project is coming in Kubwa. This is what we want to build. That if you have specific requirements, please go and indicate. So you can even go online. For the, I'm not talking of, for the lowest of the low. They created a framework of supply and of demand. There's a constitutional guarantee, and there's a focus. And where necessary, they give cash subsidies. I know we don't like to hear the word subsidies in Nigeria for obvious reasons, you know. Because there are people who say not be able to afford, even at that. They created a sub-program to deal with them. Let's look at the next slide. Okay, leave this slide. This is also affordable housing. This is also affordable housing for the lowest. Now, the amazing thing is that now they're doing like 500,000 houses per annum. Because the system, they have created the system. The woman has built a network of partners, contractors, developers, you know. And this is not whether you are APC or PDP or Labour Party. We have to objectively, when I was reading why all these other policies failed, you know, they were heavily politicized. We have to go beyond that. We have to start understanding that, hey, it is about delivering for our people. So as I round up, my view, affordable housing is difficult, but it is achievable. It is achievable. As developers struggling on the other side, as developers, you struggle to buy land. We still deliver. I'll still deliver. Now imagine when you now enable the, and I know that there have been examples in the past, housing development, EDL, you know, that they say, I don't know what kind of contractors are that, but there are partners who will work with government and deliver. As we embark on this new journey, we need to rethink the philosophy. We need to focus on these critical drivers of housing delivery. And we need to ensure that we execute and execute and execute and execute. There's a book by Larry Bossidy, The Discipline of Execution. You know, so anybody who is involved in this, please buy Larry Bossidy for them. We'll tell you, you know, the five disciplines of execution and how you must. It's the only way. We don't want to come back next year, you know, because at that time, this government will have been, in fact, 2027 is already coming, you know. We have to start delivering. We've been saying the right thing. We have to start doing the right thing. Is it difficult? Yes, it's difficult. Is it possible? It is absolutely possible. We have the resources. We just need to challenge the resources in the right way. And we can renew the hope for our people. Thank you very much.